Since the 1960s, the Rolling Stones have been considered one of the most iconic musical acts in the world. Many of their songs still remain popular, several decades after they were released. Rolling Stone magazines even listed one of the band's songs, "You Can't Always Get What You Want," as one of the greatest songs of all time. As simple as it sounds, the title explains why everyone has to make choices. Even Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and the other members of the self-styled greatest rock and roll band in the world. What you may not know about Michael Philip Jagger is that he was once a student of economics. Born into a middle-class family in Dartford, England, Jagger was raised to be a teacher like his father, earning high enough marks in school to win a scholarship to the prestigious London School of Economics. Jagger was studying accounting and finance in 1961 when a chance meeting with Keith Richards, a boyhood friend, changed his life. So, to get on the train to London one morning, and I got there, and there's Jagger, and under his arm he has 4 or 5 albums. Richards later recalled, "He's got Chuck Berry and Little Walter, Muddy Waters." Jagger invited Richards to join a few of his friends who played music together for fun. Once Richards did so, he began to change. "You could feel something holding the band together," a friend observed. "Keith sounded great." This worried Jagger's mother, who had noticed that after teaming up with Richards, her son had begun to think of music as more than just a hobby. A year after his meeting, a new R&G band, billing itself as the Rolling Stones, began to appear in London clubs. Then, in 1963, the Stones released the first record of their production. Jagger now faced a difficult choice: finish his degree or drop out of college to pursue a career in music. He later said of his decision, "It was very, very difficult, because my parents obviously didn't want me to do it. My father was furious with me, absolutely furious. I'm sure he wouldn't have been so mad if I'd volunteered to join the army. Anything but this. He couldn't believe it. I agreed with him. It wasn't a viable career opportunity." Despite his parents' misgivings, Jagger chose music, and the rest, as they say, is history. This lesson is about the choices and decisions we all face in our lives. It explores why, as the song says, we can't always get what we want. And it looks at how we can use the economic way of thinking to decide what we want most and what we are willing to give up to get it. Every time we go shopping, most of us come up against the hard truth that we can't always get what we want. But why is this so? Why do any of us have to choose at all? The simple answer is that our wants, our desires for things that meet our needs or make us happy, are unlimited, while our means of fulfilling those desires are not. Some of our wants are necessary for survival. Each of us, for example, needs food, water, and shelter to survive from day to day. However, beyond those basic necessities, what we desire to have, use, or experience is limited only by our own imaginations. Although our wants may be unlimited, our ability to satisfy them is not. We have only finite amounts of resources at our disposal. Time, for example, is a limited resource. Whether rich or poor, a person has only 24 hours available each day. Money is also limited. Even the very rich can't afford an endless supply for everything. They, like the rest of us, experience scarcity, a situation in which the supply of something is not sufficient to satisfy their wants. It is hard for most people to see scarcity the way economists do. You may not shop in stores that are overflowing with goods or physical objects produced for sale. You might look around your classroom and see that nearly everyone has paper and pencils. Many, if not all, of your classmates have cell phones. How can these goods be scarce if everyone seems to have them? Similarly, most of us have access to a multitude of services or activities done for us by others. Teachers, doctors, hairstylists, bus drivers, plumbers, nurses, and police officers all provide services we take for granted. Some are even offered to us without charge. So, how can economists see these services as scarce? And yet, goods and services are scarce. They are scarce because the resources needed to produce them, land, labor, materials, and machines, are scarce. Should you doubt that this is true, try asking someone who owns one of these resources to turn it over for free. The answer will almost surely be no. Scarcity would exist even if everyone in the world suddenly became extremely wealthy. Suppose every new multimillionaire wanted to build an elegant mansion to live in. Could they all do so? Probably not. While one essential resource for such a project, money, is now less scarce, other essential resources such as land, lumber, concrete, glass, skilled workers, and time are still just as scarce. While scarcity may seem like an abstract idea, most of us have experienced a shortage. A shortage is a lack of something that is desired, a condition that occurs when there is less of a good or service available than people want at the current price. When a venue runs out of concert tickets while the band is performing in that city, the result is a shortage. Shortages occur for many reasons. A fashion fad can cause a shortage by suddenly increasing the number of people who want to buy the trendy item. The shortage lasts until either enough items are produced for everyone who wants them, or the fad ends. Wars and natural disasters can cause shortages by disrupting the production or movement of goods. Each year before the Atlantic hurricane season, for example, people prepare for it by buying bottled water. However, because so many people are trying to buy water at the same time, many stores often completely sell out. Some people have to rely on donations to get the water they need. Shortages are usually a temporary condition. However, a shortage ends once production is resumed, or new sources of supply are found. In contrast, scarcity is forever. No matter how well people use their limited resources, there will never be enough. Take a quick break from reading and let your eyes wander around wherever you happen to be just now. What do you see? Walls, windows, furniture, books, desks, paper, pens, pencils. The list could likely go on and on. None of these goods magically appeared at this moment for your comfort and convenience. All of them were produced to satisfy somebody's wants. The question is, how is this done? Economics answer this question by looking at the inputs and outputs of the production process. Inputs are the scarce resources that go into the production process. Economists call these productive resources the factors of production and divide them into three basic categories: land, labor, capital. Outputs are the goods and services produced using these resources. Economists use the production equation to represent the process of combining resources, inputs, to produce goods and services, outputs. In its simplest form, the production equation looks like this: land plus labor plus capital equals goods and services. Some economists consider entrepreneurship, or the willingness to take the risks involved in starting a business, to be a fourth factor of production. Entrepreneurs are people who assemble the other's inputs to create new goods and services. As seen by economists, land is far more than real estate. It means all of the natural resources that are used to produce goods and services. These resources include familiar natural resources as air, soil, minerals, water, forests, plants, animals, birds, and fish. Others are less obvious, such as solar energy, wind, geothermal energy, and the electromagnetic spectrum used to transmit communication symbols. Natural resources vary in their abundance and availability. A few, such as sunlight and wind, are perpetual resources that are both widely available and in no danger of being used up. Others, including forests, fresh water, and fish, are renewable resources that with careful planning can be replenished as they are used. A few resources, mostly metals, can be recycled for us again and again. Still others, especially fossil fuels such as oil, coal, and natural gas, are non-renewable resources. Once they are used, they are gone forever. The value of natural resources depends on someone knowing how to incorporate them into the production process. Vast pools of oil have lain under the surface of Earth for millions of years. But until someone developed the tools and technology needed to extract that oil from deep under the ground and turn it into a useful fuel, it has little value. The time and effort people devote to producing goods and services in exchange for wages is called labor. This includes both physical labor, such as planting crops and building houses, and mental labor, such as writing legal briefs and programming video games. The quantity of labor available in a country depends on the size of its population and people's willingness to work. The quality of that labor depends on how skilled these workers are, otherwise known as human capital. Human capital is the knowledge and skill that people gain from education, on-the-job training, and other experiences. It is what you would be left with if someone stripped away all of your assets, says Arthur Charles Whelan, and left you on a street corner with only the clothes on your back. The importance of human capital is almost impossible to overstate. Workers with high human capital are more productive and earn more money than those with fewer skills. This is why an airline pilot makes more money than a taxi driver, even though they offer similar experiences. Airline pilots not only require much more intensive training, but they also move more people across further distances per day than do cabbies. There is a strong correlation or relationship between a country's level of human capital and its standard of living. A country like Japan, which is poor in resources but rich in human capital, can be among the world's wealthiest nations. In contrast, the correlation between a country's natural resources and living standards is weak. For example, Nigeria, which is rich in oil but poor in human capital, has a very low standard of living. Economist Gary Becker, who won a Nobel Prize for his work in human capital, estimated that about 75% of the wealth of a modern economy consists of the education, training, and skills of its people. We really should call our economy a human capitalist economy, for that is what it mainly is, he said. Indeed, in a modern economy, human capital is by far the most important form of capital in creating wealth and growth. When most Americans use the word capital, they are thinking about money that they could invest in stocks, bonds, real estate, or businesses to produce future wealth. Economists sometimes refer to money used in this way as financial capital. To an economist, however, money by itself does not produce anything. What matters in the production process are the tools, machinery, and factory buildings that money can buy. To avoid confusion, these concrete productive resources are sometimes called physical capital or capital goods. Looked at this way, capital consists of the tools, machines, and buildings used in the production of other goods and services. That last part, used in the production of other goods and services, matters. If you buy a car to drive to school and social events, it is a consumer good. If you buy a car to deliver pizzas for a restaurant, it is a capital good. Capital takes a surprising number of forms. It includes tools as simple as a screwdriver to technology as complicated as a supercomputer. Factories, office towers, warehouses, bakeries, airports, and power plants are forms of capital. So are roads, electrical grids, sewer systems, and the internet. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, capital has replaced labor in one area after another. This process began in the textile industry in England, where water-powered spinning machines and mechanical looms replaced spinners and weavers in the production of cloth. More recently, ATMs and online banking have taken over many services once handled by bank tellers. Robots have replaced assembly line workers in automobile assembly plants. Each advance in physical capital, however, has created new needs for labor. Now, employees are needed to design, produce, and maintain the new machines. Entrepreneurship is a specialized and highly valued form of human capital. It involves the combining of land, labor, and capital in new ways to produce goods and services. Entrepreneurs perform several roles in the production process, including the four listed below. Entrepreneurs think in ways to turn new inventions, technologies, or techniques into goods or services that people will want. Entrepreneurs supply the vision and make the key decisions that set the course for new business enterprises. Entrepreneurs take on the risks of starting new businesses. They invest their time, energy, and abilities, not to mention their own and often other people's money, not knowing whether they will succeed or fail. Entrepreneurs supply the energy, drive, and enthusiasm needed to turn ideas into realities. And as entrepreneur Nolan Bushnell, founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theaters, has observed, the critical ingredient is getting off your butt and doing something. It's as simple as that. A lot of people have ideas, but there are few who decide to do something about them now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. The true entrepreneur is a doer, not a dreamer. Because all these factors of production are scarce, we will never be able to produce all of the goods and services people might want. However, we can increase the productivity of our economy by using these inputs more efficiently. Productivity is a measure of the output of an economy per unit of input. It is determined by dividing total output by one of the three inputs involved in its production: land, labor, or capital. Productivity equals output over input. Productivity is stated as a ratio of output per unit of input. For example, in measuring the productivity of a lumber mill, you will begin with its output in a given period of time. In this case, the number of board feet or lumber produced in a week. You will then divide the output by one input, such as the hours of labor needed to produce that output. The mill's productivity will be the ratio of board feet produced per hour. Because productivity is a ratio of output to input, it can be raised in two ways. The first is by getting more output from the same inputs. In this case, the lumber mill, this might be accomplished by organizing the production process in a more efficient manner. By doing so, the same number of hours of labor, one of the mill's inputs, could produce more board feet of lumber, the mill's outputs, each week. The second way to raise productivity is by getting the same output from fewer inputs. Looking again at the lumber mill, this could be done by finding a way to get more board feet of lumber out of each tree that the mill's workers harvest. This improvement would enable the mill to produce the same amount of lumber, its output, using fewer trees, an input, and fewer workers to cut down the trees, another input. Some decisions in life are easy. You probably don't fret much about over which option to choose from a school lunch menu. Other decisions are agonizing. Think back to the choice facing Mick Jagger when he realized he did not have enough time to both continue his studies and be the lead singer in a band. It was very, very difficult, he said later, since his parents wanted him to stay in college. But there was another reason his decision was so tough. In making his choice, Jagger had to give up something that he valued, education, in order to get something he valued even more, which was a chance to become a rock star. The way economists see the world, people seek to make themselves as well off as possible by maximizing the utility of their decisions. They usually define utility as the satisfaction or pleasure one gains from consuming a product or service or from taking an action. But utility is more than that. We also gain utility by making choices that, while not all that pleasurable, are likely to improve our lives. Getting a vaccination or studying for a test may not be your idea of fun, but both should make you better off in the long run. Maximizing utility is seldom easy. Whether choosing which television program to watch or which college to attend, we seldom have enough information to be absolutely sure we have made the best choice. Every decision we make, even one as simple as deciding to read this text, involves giving up one thing for another. To gain time to read, you are giving up a variety of other things that you could be doing right now. Each of those other alternatives is a trade-off. Like individuals, businesses face trade-offs as they try to maximize the utility of their land, labor, and capital. Suppose an automaker decided that it could best use all of its factories and workers to build pickup trucks instead of cars. The trade-off of its decision would be the loss of its passenger car business. Societies face trade-offs as well. The classic example used by economists is the guns versus butter trade-off, in which a society must choose between using its resources to produce guns, military goods, or butter, civilian goods. The term allegedly originated during World War I, when the American government had to decide to invest in either the war effort abroad or local interests. If the society chooses guns, it maximizes its security, but at the cost of lowering living standards. If it chooses butter, the society maximizes living standards, but at the cost of reducing security. You may have noticed that each decision made by a society in the guns versus butter example involved a cost. The same is true for the decisions you make. When you choose one course of action, you lose the utility or benefits of the alternatives you did not choose. Were you to rank those alternatives, one would likely stand out as more attractive than the rest. Well, you might think of this option as your second best choice. An economist would see it as your opportunity cost. The opportunity cost of any action is the value of the next best alternative that you could have chosen instead. Whether you have 2 alternatives or 200, your opportunity cost is simply the values of the next best one. Similarly, the opportunity cost of the automobile company that decided to produce only trucks was the money it would have made by continuing to produce passenger cars. Understanding the opportunity costs of the choices you face every day can help you make better decisions. Put yourself in the situation. You are in charge of dinner tonight. You can order food for $4,500 plus $7 for delivery. You can go out to a restaurant and pick up the food yourself for $3,500 plus $3 for gas. But you will have to spend about 30 minutes driving to the restaurant and back for $35 or $45. Or you can drive to the grocery store and buy ingredients to cook dinner for $20 total. Between going to the grocery store cooking dinner and cleaning up afterward. You will have spent another 2 hours with this option. One way to sort through these alternatives is to lay them out on a decision matrix like the one in 2.3. The matrix lists all of the alternatives involved in the decisions, as well as the criteria or factors that might be used in evaluating those alternatives. In this instance, the factors are price, delivery cost, transaction time, how long it will take you to complete the purchase, and delivery time. The decision matrix does not tell you which alternative to choose, but it does clarify what you will gain and lose by choosing one over another. After analyzing the alternatives, you decide you really do not want to cook. If you choose to get delivery, your opportunity cost is $14 you would have saved by driving to pick up your food at a restaurant. If you choose to drive to the restaurant, your opportunity cost is the 30 minutes you spend driving. Knowing the opportunity cost of each alternative still does not tell you what to do. That depends on the value of $14 or 30 minutes of time to you. Should you have a better use for that half hour, such as doing homework, you probably would be better off having food delivered. If not, you might decide that trading a half hour of your time for a savings of 14 is the better choice. Note that in the dinner scenario, you are not facing an all or nothing having dinner or go or do without decision. Instead, you were employing the thinking at the margin principle by looking at the marginal utility of one purchase alternative over another. Marginal utility is the extra satisfaction or pleasure you will get from an increase of one additional unit of a good or service. One alternative in the scenario left you with more time compared to the others. Another left you with more money. An understanding of marginal utility begins with a recognition that the amount of satisfaction we get from something usually depends upon how much of that something we already have. Suppose you are so thirsty after a workout that you buy yourself a large bottle of apple juice. The first glass provides you with a high level of utility by quenching your thirst. The second glass is still satisfying, but its marginal utility is less because you are no longer so thirsty. The third or fourth glass has less utility as your first thirst disappears and your stomach fills up. The fifth glass, should you continue drinking, might have a negative utility and by making you feel sick. As the example shows, the marginal utility of something diminishes as we accumulate more of it. This explains why a homeless person is more likely to pick up a dollar bill off the sidewalk than a millionaire is. The dollar has a relatively high marginal utility to a person with little or no money. Conversely, the marginal utility of an extra buck to a person who already has $1 million is relatively low. An economist would see this difference in behavior as an example of the law of diminishing marginal utility. According to this law, as the quantity of a good consumed increases, the marginal utility of each additional unit decreases. Most of the choices we face every day are how much decisions at the margin. Think back to the dinner example. How much more would you be willing to pay to eat dinner without having to invest time in getting it? How much time would you be willing to spend to eat dinner for less? Whenever you find yourself asking how much, questions like these while considering a choice, you are thinking at the margin. In 1917, novelist and journalist Daniel Defoe published what would become one of the great classics of English literature, The Life and Strange, Surprising Adventures of Robinson Crusoe. The novel tells the story of a sailor who spent 28 years marooned on a remote tropical island. In the novel, Crusoe survives using whatever resources the island had to offer. He becomes, in essence, a one-person economy. This makes him the ideal subject for exploring an economic model used to measure what we gain and lose when we decide how to use the resources available to us. Economists call this model a Robinson Crusoe economy. The production possibilities frontier, or PPF, is an economic model in the form of a line graph that shows how an economy might use its resources to produce two goods. The graph shows all possible combinations of those goods that can be produced using the available resources and technology fully. It also helps us see the trade-offs involved in devoting more resources to the production of one good or the other. Figure 2.4a shows a PPF for Robinson Crusoe's one-person economy. It focuses on the production of two foods that Crusoe has access to while on the island, coconut and fish. In this hypothetical example, Crusoe can use the 4 hours he spends each day for food production by gathering coconuts or fishing. With the items at his disposal, he can harvest an average of 10 coconuts an hour in the forests, or catch 10 fish an hour on the beach. The sloping line on the graph shows the various combinations of coconuts and fish that Crusoe can produce in a single day. That line, known as the production possibilities curve, is straight in this simple case. In the more complex example you will look at next, the line bows outward in a curve. The line is also called the production possibilities frontier because it represents the best that this economy can do with its current factors of production. Without better tools, capital, or more time devoted to food gathering, labor, Crusoe will never produce more than any combination of coconuts and fish shown along the line graph. A PPF can also be used to measure the opportunity costs of different production choices. Consider a hypothetical country that can use its resources to produce just two goods, cell phones and bananas. Its land can be used for cell phone factories, banana plantations, or some combinations of both. Its workers can be trained to assemble phones, raise bananas, or both. Its capital goods consist of assembly line equipment, farm machinery, or some of each. The graphs in Figure 2.4b show the different production possibilities for this two-goods economy, depending on how the country's resources are allocated. Notice the bowed-out shape of the curve in this PPF. This shape indicates that the trade-offs in this economy are not the same at every point on the curve. As a result, the opportunity cost what the country gives up when choosing to produce more of either goods changes as one moves along the curve. One reason for this might be that not all the country's land is equally well suited for bananas and factories. Banana trees planted on poor land may not produce well. Factories located far from city centers may have difficulty finding workers. Another reason might be that the country's workers are not equally well trained for bananas and cell phone production. Suppose the country decides to increase its output of bananas. To do so, it would have to move workers from its factories to its plantations. The factory workers would arrive at the plantations with very different skills, such as knowing how to assemble electronic components, than the experienced plantation workers. They therefore would likely be less productive than workers who have been growing bananas for some time. The production possibilities frontier can also help us see how efficient our choices are. Economic efficiency is the result of using resources in a way that produces the maximum amount of goods and services. Every point on the PPF represents an efficient use of resources to produce that specific combination of outputs. But what if an economy does not use its resources efficiently, or wishes to produce more than is currently possible given its resources? Both of these situations are illustrated in the second graph on Figure 2.4b. Every point in the shaded area inside the PPF represents a less efficient but still attainable production possibility. This reduced efficiency might be the result of a natural disaster or of a slowdown in the economy and a resulting rise in unemployment. Whatever the reason within the shaded area, the economy is not functioning at full efficiency. Every point outside the PPF represents an unattainable production possibility. The economy's resources are already being used to the max in order to reach the points on the curve. Beyond those points, the economy cannot produce more without added resources or improvements in efficiency. A PPF is a snapshot of an economy's production possibilities at a specific moment in time. In the real world, these possibilities are constantly changing as economic conditions change. Improvements in productivity might mean more of one good can be produced using the same resources, or the economy as a whole might expand or shrink. Both of these situations are illustrated in Figure 2.4c. When an economy grows, economists say that the PPF has shifted to the right. Productivity increases, jobs are more plentiful, and living standards improve. Likewise, when an economy shrinks, the PPF shifts to the left. Productivity falls, unemployment rises, and living standards decline. A number of factors can cause such shifts. What is important to remember is that while you cannot always have everything you want, the decisions you make in life may influence what you get. The most important of those decisions from an economic point of view is how you maximize your human capital. You may never make enough money to get everything you want, but with enough human capital, you should be able to get what you need. To summarize, life is full of choices and decisions. The study of economics helps us see why we have to choose among alternatives. It also gives us tools for thinking about how about what we stand to gain and lose when making life's decisions. Scarcity exists because our wants, which are infinite, exceed our resources, which are finite. Unlike shortages, which are temporary in nature, scarcity is an inescapable fact of life. It means we can never have everything we might want. Goods and services are produced by bringing together the three factors of production: land, labor, and capital. Entrepreneurship is an essential part of the production process. Entrepreneurs combine land, labor, and capital in new ways to create products that satisfy economic wants. Every choice involves trade-offs among alternatives. When making a choice, people generally try to maximize the utility or satisfaction they hope to gain by choosing one alternative over another. The opportunity cost of any decision is the value of the next best alternative. Economists use an economic model known as the production possibilities frontier to measure what we gain and lose when deciding how to use the factors of production in different ways. The model shows the trade-offs and opportunity costs involved in producing more of one good at the expense of another. It also reminds us that even when an economy is working at peak efficiency, it will not be able to produce everything that we might want.